What is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. So as you guys know, Fortnite has an absolute ton of different creative maps you can use to get good super fast. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys 8 of the best Fortnite creative maps that you can use to improve incredibly fast. This video is going to be split into 3 sections, which are building and editing, aiming, and then combat. And overall, by the end of this video, you should have a huge arsenal of amazing maps that you can use to improve super quickly. Before we get into it, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more tips and tricks content just like this in the future. And of course, it's always super appreciated if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It takes like 5 seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who uses it. With all that said, and without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. So our first section for this video is going to be building and editing, and we're actually only going to be going over 2 maps for this section because these 2 maps cover a whole bunch of territory when it comes to that stuff. And the first one we're going to cover is Raiders Mechanics Map V3. This map is basically an all-in-one mechanical practice map for Fortnite. It has a huge variety of different scenarios, which I'll go over real quick, and it helps you a ton when it comes to all parts of your building and editing. So with that said, the first section I really like is the Piece Control X Peak training. This section is essentially a section where you piece control your opponent in a specific way, but you actually get shot if you peek for too long. So it helps you to not only piece control your opponent, but to do it safely and go for a good peek. It's a bit of a difficult one to get used to, but once you get used to it, you're going to be much better at going for optimal peaks in game and improve your piece control at the same time. Into the second section of this map, and this one is Piece Control Tunnels. It's essentially a way to practice your piece control without directly doing piece control techniques in a sense, because you're essentially meant to build in front of you and simulate as if you're tunneling towards somebody in a piece control fashion, so that helps a bunch. Another one is the edit while moving. This one essentially helps you to learn to edit from different angles. It's a pretty simple concept, but when you do it over and over again, it helps build some really good muscle memory and it'll make you more consistent. Then you've got the box fight training section, which is very self-explanatory. It's basically a bunch of AIs that run around and you're supposed to box fight them. So once again, this helps with piece control, editing, going for the right building techniques, and all sorts of stuff like that. The AI bot free build is the next section, and another similar section to that. Once again, you're basically free building and you come across bots which you're meant to shoot. And lastly guys, the final section I'll be covering here is the free build with adjustable speeds. So essentially this is just a regular free build, except you're able to adjust the speed that you go at. So if you want to focus on being very precise and controlled, you can go for a slower speed, or if you want to work on your actual speed of techniques and being super fast, then you can raise your speed, or you can just free build with regular speed if that's your thing. Overall guys, Raiders Mechanics Map V3 is a fantastic map, and I'll go ahead and put up the code on screen right now so you can give it a shot. Getting into our second building and editing map, and this one is Jiven's practice map. This map is by the YouTuber Jiven TV, and credit to him for the footage. Definitely check out his video on it if you want some extra info about his map, but I'm going to go over a couple of sections real quick. One section I really like here is the reactive tunneling section. Essentially what this section does is it puts you in a little box and you have to follow this box while you're tunneling. So this really helps you to learn how to tunnel through difficult spaces and kind of maneuver your way through and improvise as you go. This is something that's really important, especially if you're a competitive player and trying to improve an endgame. Another great one is the retake practice. Essentially what this is it spawn bots above you and you're meant to do retakes to get up to them, piece control them, and go for the shot and then continue building up. So that's another really useful way to practice. Then you've got the guided free build, which is another very unique scenario. This is basically a free build except the map guides you on where to go. So you can kind of compare this to the reactive tunneling, because in this scenario you're also reacting to what the map is doing essentially, and you have to learn to improvise on the fly with your free builds. But it is a bit different in the sense that you go up and down, and essentially you're meant to do retake type stuff instead of tunneling. And as well as that, there are various aim training scenarios in this map which are pretty good. I'm not going to go too in depth on all of them because we are going over aiming maps in a second, but those are always worth trying out if you want to give them a shot. And there's more to this map. There are some other sections, but those were some of the highlights right there. Jiven's practice map is a fantastic map, and definitely this along with Raiders Mechanics Map V3 should be a dangerous combination. So with that said, I'll put the code up on screen right now. Getting into the second section of this video though, and this one is going to be all about our aiming maps. And getting into our first aiming map, and this one is going to be the Scavic Aim Trainer. The Scavic Aim Trainer is made by a YouTuber named Donwazi. He's notorious for making a bunch of awesome maps, and this one has a good variety of target practice type scenarios that you can use to work on all areas of your aim, from like flick shots to tracking, target switching, reaction time, and all sorts of stuff like that. If you know the aim trainer called Kovacs, this is essentially meant to be a Fortnite version of that, and they do a pretty darn good job. And this map also has some really unique scenarios like side jump shots where you practice hitting your opponent while you side jump. That's super applicable to pretty much all in-game fights because it's something you do a lot if you're a really good player. You also have peak practice where you practice editing on and getting angles on your opponent. And you even have box fight and piece control sections where you box up your opponent and go for an optimal peak on them. And all this stuff helps a ton with actual fights and hitting your shots in those scenarios. So with that said, I'll put the code up on screen to the Scavic Aim Trainer right now. And our second aim map that we're going to go over is going to be Raider 464's aim training map. This is another amazing aim training map and one that goes super well with the Scavic Aim Trainer. This one has a huge variety variety of scenarios from ARs to SMGs to shotguns, and it's basically an all-in-one Fortnite aim trainer. It also has some other specific stuff like aim duels against AIs that move like players, and that simulates like a close range fight, and it even has glider scenarios where you can practice shooting people out of the air. Another huge benefit of this map is that even though it has things like glider scenarios and aim duel scenarios and stuff like that, it does have the benefit of being entirely single player, because the map actually uses AIs to simulate how players move. So that means you don't have to deal with trying to find players and all that stuff. It definitely helps a bunch because that can be a pain sometimes. And with that said, Raiders Aim Training Map is another fantastic map, and I'll go ahead and put up the code on screen right now. With that said, guys, getting into our third section of this video, and this one is going to be all about combat maps. This one's going to have 4 different maps within it because there are a lot of really good fighting maps in this game, and it's going to be our final section for this video. Getting into our first combat map, and this one is going to be your classic realistic 1v1. A realistic 1v1 is basically a full-on simulation of a typical mid-game fight. You're put up against another player in the open, and you're essentially meant to box up or build fight or whatever you want to do in order to kill your opponent, just like a regular fight in game. You can either hop in here with a friend and 1v1 them, or you can find a random player by setting your matchmaking to public. However you decide to do it, this is one of the most intuitive fighting maps, and it's definitely a great way to practice your overall fighting abilities. And of course, it's very applicable to real games because it's meant to simulate exactly what you would run into in a regular fight. So with that said, this is a super useful map, and I'll put the code up on screen to it right now. Getting into our next map, and this one is going to be a speed realistic 1v1. This map, published by Ken Beans, is basically a twist on your regular realistic 1v1. Instead of a regular one-on-one fight, this map actually puts you in very close proximity with one person pushing and one person assigned to defense. It puts you in a box fight very similar to the type that you would find in a lot of ranked games. Essentially, both players spawn and one is assigned to build a box, and the other one is essentially spawned flying towards them, and from there you just battle it out in a box fight type of fashion. This is essentially a more close range oriented version of your regular realistic 1v1, and it's a great map to use for practice. Huge shout out to Ken Beans, the creator of this map. It's a really good map, and he also has some other really cool creative maps, and I'm sure he's coming out with more as well. But with that said, this map is incredibly useful for improving at fighting, so I'll put the code up on screen right now. Getting into our third combat map and our second to last map for this video, and this one is going to be Raider 464's build fight map. Now, there are a lot of build fight maps out there, but I do pick this one for a couple of reasons. First off, it's super well built, it has minimal input delay, and it's made by Raider 464, and he's awesome. This is basically another variation of a 1v1. This one has infinite materials compared to the other maps, which usually have finite materials, and essentially this is a great way to get a lot of mechanical practice in while combining it with fighting practice, and it should be super helpful for overall improvement. Since your materials aren't even capped in this map, you can build as much as you want. You can do all the different retakes and all the different techniques that you feel like doing. Just keep in mind that your playstyle here shouldn't dictate how you play in real games. It's intended as more of a way to practice fighting with an extra emphasis on retakes and things of that nature, but definitely take advantage of it because it's a great way to improve at building, and I'll put the code up on screen right now. And finally, guys, getting into our last map for this video and our fourth combat map, and this one is going to be the Martaz Turtle Wars map. This map is a pretty simple concept. It's basically a bunch of players confined in one big box, and your goal is essentially just to rack up a bunch of kills. You get siphoned up to maximum HP every time you get a kill, which means you can play super aggressive, get a ton of fights in, and improve your box fighting abilities a ton. Think of it as like one of your regular box fight maps, except times like 16 because there's a bunch of players in the lobby. It's a great way to get a lot of fights in back to back and work on your box fighting skills, so I definitely recommend you give it a shot. I'll put the code up to Martaz's Turtle Wars map right now. And with that said, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Overall, we've covered 8 different maps in this video, and hopefully they're super helpful for you guys. I know we've covered a lot of different codes in this video, and it might be hard to keep track of all them. So what we're gonna do real quick is, instead of making you go back in the video for all of them, I'm gonna show them all on screen right now. First up, I'm gonna show you guys the building and editing code. So on top is Raiders Mechanics Map V3, then you got Jiven's Practice Map. After that, we've got the aiming map, so on top is going to be the code to scavic Aim Trainer, and then you've got Raiders Aim Training Map below it. And finally, guys, here's all our combat maps. On top is the realistic 1v1, then you've got the speed realistic 1v1, then you've got the build fight map, and finally you've got the Turtle Wars map. I just wanted to make sure I give you guys those because there are a lot of codes in this video, and I don't want you to have to go and rummage through the video for all of them. So hopefully that helps you out. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more content just like this in the future. And as always, guys, it's super appreciated if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a few seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who uses it. But with all that said, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.